On the night before Marilyn Monroe died, the man sitting at the piano playing for her in a private room was not her husband, not an official lover, and not her doctor. It was Warren Beatty. The next morning, Marilyn Monroe was dead, and Beatty became one of the last people to see the greatest icon in Hollywood alive. No scandal erupted. No clear explanation was ever given. There was only that meeting, one he never fully told. That was not the only accident to cling to Warren Beatty's life. He was the man the press once claimed had tens of thousands of relationships. A cinematic prodigy who helped usher in new Hollywood, an Oscar-winning director, an untouchable symbol of masculinity. Yet at the same time, he stood at the center of broken stories. Women who left in silence, secrets buried for decades, and only later revealed through tears and memoirs. Beatty's life is a chain of stark contradictions, blazing talent paired with personal chaos. A razor-sharp intellect, accompanied by an obsession with control, global fame alongside a perpetually unsettled inner world. He did not merely make films, he manipulated creative power. He did not merely love, he left consequences. And he did not simply pass through Hollywood, he forced Hollywood to change with him. This story is not meant to glorify or to condemn, but can genius ever be separated from the harm it causes? And Warren Beatty, with all his brilliance, tragedy, and shadow, may be the harshest test of that question. Before those tragedies surfaced under flashbulbs and tabloid front pages, Warren Beatty had been forged in an environment utterly unlike Hollywood, one without glamour, without privilege, and with no tolerance for indulgence. Warren Beatty was born in 1937 in Virginia, into a middle-class family rooted in education. His father was a psychologist and university lecturer, his mother a high school drama teacher. It was a household that prized discipline, reason, and order, where emotional display was discouraged and achievement was inseparable from self-control. While his older sister, Shirley MacLaine, showed an early, forceful flair for performance, Beatty was the quiet child, more observer than speaker, memorizing small gestures and subtle shifts in others as a kind of survival instinct. His teenage years were not immediately tied to the arts. Beatty was a high school football star, heavily recruited by major universities. Yet, the very sense of being boxed in, expected to become the right person in the right role, began to unsettle him. He walked away from sports, abandoned the pre-mapped paths, and chose Northwestern University not for its prestige, but in the hope of finding intellectual freedom. That hope quickly collapsed. After a short time, Beatty left school, choosing to face his family's disappointment rather than turn away from something he could not yet clearly name, but knew he could not abandon. New York greeted him with cramped rooms, temporary jobs, and punishing acting classes under Stella Adler. There, Beatty learned the most decisive lesson of his life. Power does not come from being chosen, but from taking control. He absorbed Stanislavski with cold rationality rather than impulsive passion. He trained acting as a discipline, almost a science, not as an artistic intoxication. During this period, a distinct personality took shape, a man driven to push everything to its limits, convinced that unless he controlled space, people, and rhythm around him, he himself would be swallowed whole. When Beatty left New York for Hollywood, he did not carry the innocence of a dreamer. He carried an intense need to dominate his surroundings, a trait that would later lift him to extraordinary heights and quietly sow the seeds of fractures that could never be undone. From the need for control forged in New York, Warren Beatty did not enter the profession waiting for luck. He entered, like a man surveying territory. Northwestern had been a brief experiment, quickly abandoned, but New York was not. There, Beatty threw himself into Stella Adler's classes with the intensity of someone who knew he had no retreat. Studying roles as structures, analyzing character motivation like equations, rehearsing until every movement fell within his command. He took whatever jobs were necessary to survive, but his real energy was poured into the stage, where every misstep was exposed instantly. His first breakthrough came on Broadway. A Loss of Roses was not a long-running production, but Beatty's performance was another matter. At 22, he earned a Tony nomination, an early recognition that was as dangerous as it was flattering, turning a young actor into a focal point of attention. Screen test offers followed almost immediately, like a door already ajar. At the same time, Beatty began to understand that talent alone was insufficient. He watched how the press operated, how certain faces stayed in circulation through offstage lives as much as on-stage work, and he began to construct an image, not loud, but suggestive. Attraction was deployed as soft power, provoking curiosity, unbalancing others, keeping the rhythm of the game in his own hands. This was not impulse, it was strategy. Hollywood called, but Beatty did not enter without calculation. In 1960, as the shadow of the Vietnam War began to lengthen, he joined the California Air National Guard. A year later, he was discharged, thereby avoiding the likelihood of being drafted. The decision did not ignite an immediate media storm, but it left a long, lingering blur. While his public image leaned toward that of a dissenting artist and political intellectual, this personal choice was read by those who understood the context as coldly pragmatic. Beatty offered no explanation. He moved on, carrying an early formed paradox, a man who demanded truth in art, yet accepted silence in life. When a Hollywood contract finally opened, Beatty already possessed everything needed to provoke controversy: prestigious nominations, public magnetism, and a reputation just beginning to crystallize, enough to be pursued and enough to be scrutinized. He entered film not as someone anointed, but as someone placing a wager. If power lay in choosing roles, controlling pace, and defining one's image, then he would pursue it to the end, even if the cost was a set of simmering conflicts not yet fully named. If Hollywood was a door barely ajar, Splendor in the Grass was the kick that blew its hinges apart. At 24, Warren Beatty arrived on the big screen not as a promising face, but as a direct collision. His portrayal of Bud Stamper, a young man crushed by repressed desire, hypocrisy, and social expectation, allowed Beatty to unleash an energy both seductive and dangerous, far beyond what Broadway had revealed. The film was a major commercial success, quickly elevating him to A-list stardom. It brought his co-star Natalie Wood an Academy Award nomination, while Beatty received the Golden Globe for New Star of the Year, an early, weighty recognition from which there was no easy retreat. On set, pressure was pushed to the extreme by Elia Kazan, a director intolerant of anything that felt safe. Kazan drove actors into the most fragile regions of emotion, repeating takes until exhaustion itself became part of the character. The tension did not end when the camera stopped. Rumors of a relationship between Beatty and Wood spread quickly, while Joan Collins, Beatty's partner at the time, loomed as a shadow that could not be ignored. The press closed in. Private life stretched taut alongside the film's narrative, and Beatty absorbed a cold truth. Sex, power, and media attention could operate in parallel, reinforcing one another. He did not resist that realization. He stored it away. Yet instead of riding the wave upward, Beatty made a sharp turn. The early 1960s unfolded as a sequence of seemingly deliberate missteps. He chose muted projects, accepted roles harshly criticized, appeared in low-grossing films that prompted Hollywood to whisper that its new star was squandering his glow. But within that lull, Beatty was quietly engaged elsewhere, studying contract law, tracking production structures, inserting himself deeply into scripts and questions of creative control. He allowed his public image to decline, a calculated sacrifice, in exchange for what he deemed essential in the long run, decision-making freedom. And while the surface suggested failure, beneath it a durable strategy was taking shape, preparing for a pivot that would eventually force Hollywood to play by his rules. The year 1961 marked the moment Warren Beatty no longer belonged to his private life alone. The explosive success of Splendor in the Grass not only elevated him to A-list stardom, but turned every personal movement into part of a public performance. Beatty was barely in his 20s, famous too quickly, too forcefully, before he had developed any real defenses against the intrusive gaze of the press and the public. His career's sudden ascent brought with it a harsh reality. Romantic life was no longer a refuge, but a second battlefield. At the time, Beatty was involved with Joan Collins, a woman slightly older than him, seasoned, and fully aware of how Hollywood operates when fame collides with public morality. Collins was not merely a lover, she was a guide, someone accustomed to calculating each step between passion and image. They lived within the compressed rhythm of a rising star's life, packed shooting schedules, endless parties, journalists constantly watching. The relationship carried both allure and unease. Beatty was drawn to Collins's gentle form of control, yet increasingly bristled against the feeling of being held too tightly. By late 1961, when rumors of intimacy between Beatty and his co-star Natalie Wood spilled from the set onto the front pages, that fragile balance collapsed. Wood's presence, youthful, vulnerable, and haunted by the fear of being forgotten, forced Collins to confront not only the possibility of losing the man she loved, but the prospect of being replaced at the center of a media storm. Pressure mounted so quickly that Beatty chose an instinctive escape. He proposed. The proposal did not stem from readiness for marriage, but from a desire to contain the crisis, to lock down a situation slipping out of his control. The marriage never had time to take shape. In early 1962, the relationship ended in heavy silence. No statement, no public explanations. Decades later, Joan Collins would reveal the darkest layer of that period. She had been pregnant with Beatty's child and chose to have an abortion, understanding that a scandal at the exact moment he had reached the peak of early fame could destroy both their futures. The decision was not spoken of at the time, but it quietly shaped Beatty's understanding of power, fame, and the price women around him were forced to pay when the spotlight was still unstable. By 1962, Warren Beatty moved in with Natalie Wood, a shift not only in his private life, but in how Hollywood perceived him. They no longer hid their relationship as they had in the cautious early months, but appeared together at friends' gatherings, discreet dinners filled with influential figures, short trips tacitly understood as trial runs for a longer future. Wood, having endured significant professional and emotional turbulence, found in Beatty a sense of being chosen, of standing at the center of a new narrative. No longer a former star, but a woman openly desired. Their shared living space created a rare appearance of stability in Beatty's orbit at the time. Friends noticed he attended fewer late-night parties. Wood began speaking of undefined plans, roles they might choose together, upcoming seasons that no longer felt like solitary escape. The press quickly fused their names into a symbol of the early 1960s, a couple visually compelling and laden with promise. Reconciling a rising male talent with a female star seeking her footing again, the rupture came in a way that defied easy explanation. During a period whose exact duration was never publicly clarified, Beatty vanished from their shared space for days. No message, no explanation, no indication he would return. For Wood, the silence was not merely abandonment, It reactivated her deepest fear, being replaced, left behind before she could defend herself. When Beatty finally reappeared, there was no loud confrontation, no public drama. Wood ended the relationship immediately, a decisive act carried out quietly, yet with greater psychological weight than any statement could have borne. Not long after, Wood suffered a severe psychological crisis and attempted suicide, an event later confirmed by those close to her. She survived, but the collapse drove her away from the screen for years, marking a long hiatus in both her career and personal life. For Beatty, this episode didn't trigger an immediate scandal, but it left a silent aftershock. For the first time, his romantic life had not only wounded himself, but inflicted profound psychological consequences on the woman beside him. From that point on, the image of the elusive, magnetic man began to fuse with something more unsettling. The realization that his presence could pull others into his orbit, and then withdraw without explanation. The aftershocks of the early 1960s collapse did not push Warren Beatty out of Hollywood. They forced him to change how he existed within it. After a string of films deemed failures, Beatty no longer believed that talent or star power could protect him from the studio system. He began scrutinizing the contracts he signed, the decisions he was excluded from, and recognized a fatal weakness. Without control, he was always the one who paid the final price. It was in this state, wounded yet clear-eyed, that Beatty found the project that would alter the entire trajectory of his life, Bonnie and Clyde. At first, the script was dismissed as dangerous, violent, amoral, fundamentally opposed to old Hollywood sensibilities. Beatty did more than take on the role of Clyde Barrow. He placed himself in the position of producer, agreeing to reduce his salary and accept an unusually low budget for someone of his stature in exchange for deep authority over casting, editing, and aesthetic direction. Convincing Jack Warner became a prolonged negotiation in which Beatty was willing to lower his personal standing to secure the project, not out of humility, but because he understood this was the only gamble capable of restoring long-term control. The film's production was anything but smooth. Skepticism permeated everything from boardrooms to test screenings. The violence was deemed excessive, the editing chaotic, the protagonists insufficiently heroic. Beatty, by this point, was no longer a star trying to please the system, but someone deliberately challenging it. When the film was released in 1967, initial reactions were sharply divided, until momentum built beyond expectations. Younger audiences embraced it, box office numbers soared, and the film became a cultural detonation, grossing over $70 million on a budget of roughly $2.5 million. Major nominations and awards confirmed what Hollywood was forced to accept. The rules had changed. From that moment on, Beatty never returned to his former position. He stopped searching for roles. He searched for decision-making power. The earlier personal wounds and deliberately endured failures crystallized into a cold but lucid principle. He would only enter the game if he held the steering wheel to the end. From Bonnie and Clyde onward, Warren Beatty was no longer merely a star. He became a force. After Bonnie and Clyde, creative power ceased to be an abstract concept for Beatty and began to seep directly into how he lived and loved. From the late 1960s onward, his long but unstable relationship with Julie Christie emerged as an extension of that personal philosophy. Two intelligent, fiercely independent individuals, both resistant to traditional possession, chose a loosely bound model of attachment in which personal freedom stood equal to affection. That open structure nourished creativity while quietly sowing fractures. Loving deeply without submitting to restraint, staying connected while perpetually on the verge of slipping apart. In 1971, Beatty carried that spirit into McCabe and Mrs. Miller, his collaboration with Robert Altman. The film defied every convention of the Western: a fragile protagonist, raw violence, a slow and somber rhythm. Upon release, it failed at the box office and was dismissed as cold and inaccessible. Beatty neither adjusted nor attempted damage control. Time did that work for him, as the film gradually came to be regarded as a masterwork of the anti-Western genre, and his willingness to absorb commercial loss revealed itself as a long-term investment in artistic credibility. By 1974, Beatty deliberately pushed his level of intervention to a new extreme with Shampoo. No longer quiet control behind the scenes, but an open declaration of creative authority. He did not merely act, he co-wrote and produced the film, turning it into a space where personal life, politics, and a caustic view of post-1968 America intersected without filters. The character George Roundy, a hairdresser sustained by overlapping sexual relationships, was crafted neither as hero nor villain, but as the raw product of a society obsessed with pleasure, fame, and moral emptiness. Set against the backdrop of the 1968 presidential election, the film treats slogans, ideals, and political power as little more than scenery for private desires operating behind bedroom doors. Beatty did not moralize, but he did not evade. Sex in Shampoo is mechanical, not romantic. Power is petty, not noble. Relationships collide and disintegrate in a shared sense of disorientation. That narrative choice made the film both commercially appealing and deeply unsettling to conservative critics. Released in 1975, Shampoo became one of Beatty's highest-grossing films of the era and earned multiple Academy Award nominations for writing and performance. Success, however, did not quiet controversy. Beatty was labeled a pseudo-intellectual, accused of exploiting political context to magnify his ego and turning social chaos into a stage for personal instinct. He neither responded nor explained his artistic motives. The silence was not avoidance but calculation, allowing the film and its controversies to operate on their own, keeping Beatty's name at the center of ongoing debates about cinema, power, and morality, where he was growing increasingly comfortable as a provocateur rather than a consensus builder. This period witnessed a strange fusion of commercial success and obsessive control. Heaven Can Wait, 1978, released with Beatty serving simultaneously as director, producer, and lead actor, was a major hit and earned 9 Academy Award nominations. Its completion bore the marks of meticulous fixation. Beatty monitored every edit, every transition, to the point that the original co-director was gradually pushed out of the creative orbit. Hollywood began to refer to him, without affection, as a control freak. Running parallel to these victories was his relationship with Michelle Phillips. They lived together, spoke of marriage, and then dissolved into prolonged silence. After the breakup, Phillips faced a severe psychological collapse, while Beatty continued forward, carrying with him yet another layer of contradiction. Each artistic advance left behind personal damage that resisted easy naming. After the turbulent experimental 1970s, Warren Beatty poured what remained of his energy into a project he had been nurturing since the start of that decade: Reds. This was not a film born of sudden inspiration, but the result of years of research, interviews, archival reading, and personal obsession centered on John Reed, the Russian Revolution, and the tension between political ideals and the human cost they exact. Beatty entrusted nothing to chance. He directed, starred, co-wrote, and retained final authority over every stage of the process, from editing rhythm to the length of individual lines of dialogue. His working methods quickly pushed the crew into a state of constant strain. Scenes were repeated dozens of times, sometimes up to 80 takes for moments that appeared minor on screen. Beatty demanded not only technical precision in performance, but repeatedly explained historical context, political viewpoints, and the ideological weight behind each character's actions. To some, this was perfectionism. To others, a form of imposition that made the set oppressive. Veteran actors showed signs of exhaustion, while technical crews faced schedules that seemed endless. Concern did not come only from within the production. Studios were wary of a large-scale political film at a time when American audiences remained cautious of left-leaning narratives. The budget swelled as the shoot dragged on, and Beatty chose to shoulder much of the financial risk himself. A decision that revealed a level of personal stake rarely seen in Hollywood at the time. Each passing day brought more pressure, more skeptical glances, more questions about whether this obsession would end in disaster. When Reds premiered in 1981, all that tension was compressed into a long, dialogue-heavy, idea-dense work. The film received 12 Academy Award nominations, with Beatty winning Best Director, a direct acknowledgement of the vision he had pursued to the end. Reds became one of the few American political epics to achieve both scale and critical legitimacy, marking the moment Beatty stood at the highest intersection of intellect, creative power, and the heavy price of years-long obsession. After Reds, Warren Beatty entered the late 1980s in a peculiar position. Too powerful to be managed, yet too unpredictable to be fully trusted by Hollywood. Against that backdrop, his highly publicized relationship with Madonna in 1989-1990 erupted like a media wildfire. Two dominant personalities, two egos unwilling to yield, collided amid control, jealousy, and manipulation of public image. The press dissected every gesture, every joint appearance, turning the relationship into part of the late Cold War Hollywood spectacle, where private life was consumed as entertainment. For Beatty, it was not merely romantic noise, but a reminder that everything he touched instantly became a focal point, whether he wanted it or not. During this period, Beatty deliberately slowed his pace. He turned down numerous blockbuster projects that could have preserved both reputation and revenue, a choice that increasingly frustrated studios. Hollywood was accustomed to shaping its stars, but with Beatty it found no leverage. He did not urgently need money, did not chase short-term prestige, and was willing to disappear for years if full creative control was not guaranteed. In 1990, Beatty returned with Dick Tracy, a project that appeared to be pure entertainment but was in fact a rare display of visual authority. He not only starred and produced, but controlled the color palette of every frame, forcing the film world to operate according to the logic of a living comic strip, stylized, artificial, unapologetically unreal. The film was a major box office success, becoming one of the year's highest-grossing releases and winning 3 Academy Awards in technical categories. Yet even the promotional campaign was tense, as Beatty repeatedly clashed with Disney over marketing strategy, demonstrating that even within a commercial project, he refused to allow his image to be steered along familiar tracks. By 1998, Beatty made a move many viewed as self-sabotage with Bulworth. He directed, produced, and starred in a film that launched a frontal assault on the American political system, using satire, rap, and absurdity to expose the moral compromises of power. From the moment cameras rolled, studios feared public backlash, while the media labeled the project mad, unclassifiable, and box office unfriendly. Bulworth did not become a commercial explosion, but over time it came to be regarded as a political cult film, one in which Beatty willingly traded the safety of reputation for what he considered essential: an uncensored personal voice, even if it pushed him further from the center of the Hollywood he had once dominated. After Bulworth, When Warren Beatty had grown accustomed to standing alone against waves of criticism and controversy, the arrival of Annette Bening felt unlike any woman who had come before in his life. They met during preparations for Bugsy, 1991, a project into which Beatty had invested both artistic ambition and reputational stakes. Bening arrived at her audition without star aura and without attempting to impress through social polish. She entered the room with a cool focus, a clear grasp of the character, and a refusal to let Beatty dominate the space through his habitual authority. It was precisely that lack of concession that caught his attention, and then pulled him in a way he could not control. The relationship developed rapidly, almost in defiance of Beatty's long and tangled romantic history. He proposed to Bening after only a short time, a decision that stunned crew members and friends alike. By 1992, they were married, formally closing the chapter on the man Hollywood had long regarded as a symbol of non-commitment. For Beatty, this was not a pause, but a structural change in life. For the first time, he accepted placing his personal world within a durable framework, where decisions no longer revolved solely around a singular creative ego. Their family expanded quickly in the 1990s with 4 children. Beatty's rhythm of life shifted visibly. He reduced his filmmaking output, turned down many major projects, and chose to remain behind the scenes of family life rather than at the center of media attention. School meetings and time at home gradually replaced studio negotiations. Bening continued her acting career at a steady pace, while Beatty accepted a more flexible role, an uncommon reversal for a man long accustomed to controlling every space he entered. That stability did not erase the shadows of the past. Old stories, former relationships that had left wounds, and Beatty's public image continued to exert a low, persistent pressure on the marriage. There were periods of tension that forced both partners to confront issues directly, not through silence or avoidance, but through therapy and extended dialogue. Bening did not play the role of unconditional forgiveness. She set clear boundaries, demanded responsibility and genuine presence, compelling Beatty to learn how to listen rather than lead. Within this relationship, Beatty lived with a form of power entirely different from before. The power of commitment. No longer the man who could disappear and return at will, he had to stay, to be accountable for the long-term consequences of each choice. Family became the one space he could not direct at will, and it was there that he was forced to accept the most difficult role of his life: husband, father, living within limits he could not rewrite through a script. Today, in his 80s, Beatty rarely appears in public. He avoids long interviews, shuns promotional cycles, and nurtures no myth of a comeback. Most of his time is devoted to family, to quiet routines, and to a habit he has never lost: reading, writing, and thinking through ideas, fully aware that many of them may never become films. For Beatty, the act of continued reflection matters more than proving continued activity. This slower pace does not signal compromise. Beatty maintains a clear distance from modern Hollywood, where control is fragmented among studios, platforms, and algorithms. He neither publicly protests nor loudly criticizes. His silent refusal is itself a position. A man who once demanded final authority at every stage of filmmaking understands all too well that, in an environment where such authority is no longer possible, withdrawal is the only way to avoid losing the creative identity built over a lifetime. Beatty's legacy lies not in the quantity of films, but in how he altered the artist's role within the Hollywood system. Before Beatty, stars were typically hired hands. After Beatty, a generation of actor-director-producers understood they could become centers of creative power. From Bonnie and Clyde to Reds, from deliberate failures to cultural detonations, he demonstrated that control over content, acceptance of risk, and personal accountability could yield value more enduring than immediate box office returns. The cost of that path was solitude, controversy, and no small amount of damage left behind. Beatty never attempted to soften his image, nor did he seek forgiveness through words. His legacy thus carries two inseparable sides: a rare cinematic intellect that expanded the boundaries of creative freedom, and a complex human being who forces those who look back to confront an uncomfortable question about the line between genius, power, and responsibility. In that sense, Warren Beatty is not merely a name in Hollywood history. He is an unfinished test, one American cinema has yet to answer fully. What sets Warren Beatty apart is not the number of medals or titles, but his refusal to live easily with his own talent. He understood the seduction of power, fame, and admiration, yet he also saw the price artists pay when they allow themselves to be domesticated. He chose the harder path, to retain control, to preserve a voice, and to accept being misunderstood. He allowed obsession to guide him, permitted inner contradictions to seep into every creative decision, and accepted loneliness as the cost of freedom. Today, when Warren Beatty is mentioned, people do not only recall Bonnie and Clyde, Reds, or the romances that once filled tabloid pages. They remember a man who forced Hollywood to reconsider the power of the artist, an actor who refused to be a tool, a director who rejected compromise, a star willing to dim his own glow if it meant preserving truth. The legacy is not gentle or comforting, but it endures in the way only those who refuse to bow can endure. If you have ever been drawn to a film that dared to defy its era, felt the weight of a political story that refused to flatter the crowd, or believed that art can exist without asking permission, then somewhere you have touched the spirit of Warren Beatty. And if you want to keep exploring those who live honestly, live difficultly, and live fully with the consequences of their choices behind Hollywood's glare, stay with the channel so we can continue telling stories not meant for easy consumption.